like the more I've done this and the more I do this every year, the more that those things are kind of coming into alignment, where I'm like looking at the vision board, I'm looking at my real life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I live in San Francisco. I'm like in the sun all the time. I'm doing it. This was so scary to me a year ago, and now this is just my new normal. And it's like last year's ceiling is this year's floor, and it's just so exciting to just keep building on that every year. So if you want to click in the description, there's a PDF that you can find. You can download it on your iPad. That's what I'm doing. You can copy it down in a journal. If you want to just copy down the prompts, you could print it off if you want. But I want you to be able to like work along with me, and this challenge is all about changing your life. And I want our lives to like actually change. So I actually have action steps to actually think about like, how do we want our lives to change? So today is all about how do you sustain a goal throughout a year? So last video was all about, you've like set your goal for the year, and then how do you sustain it? How do you remain motivated? So part of it is what we talked about in the first video with kind of inspiring messages to yourself that we talked about. But then part of it, it's actually very practical, and there's actually like you need a system to be able to sustain these habits. So I've implemented planning routines. So I have kind of like we've done the yearly goal setting, but I have quarterly planning routines and monthly planning routines. I also do have like weekly and daily, but I'm going to save that for later on. But today I just want to talk about quarterly and monthly planning routines. And it's basically just two parts. There's two parts to the routine. The first part is how do you get remotivated and re-inspired? And then the second part is like, how do you chunk your goals down further? How do you make sure, like, am I at the benchmark I wanted to be at? Do I need to reevaluate? Do I still align with my goals? Are they still important to me? So that's what we're going to do. So this is 2 pages today. So the first page is all about the reflecting, getting inspired. So my quarterly and monthly planning routines are pretty much the same as each other. It's just different delineations of time. And one of the big reasons for doing this is I was reading in the book When by Daniel Pink, and he talks about the brain kind of feels like whenever there's a new beginning, it's easy to get re-inspired and set vision. So that's why a lot of people do set New Year's routines and kind of set New Year's goals. But actually, he's like, the more you can manufacture new beginnings, like you can tap into that same energy, kind of this like new relationship energy at any type of new beginning. So he's like, the more new beginnings you can create, the more you can kind of sustain that progress. So I've done this. So I've kind of manufactured all these new beginnings. So that's why we've got the quarterly planning, the monthly planning. I do also do weekly and daily. You're just trying to stimulate like as many new beginnings as you can. So like an example you could put, so for my reflection, when I do quarterly and monthly planning, I will reflect on the journal prompts. What are the 3 biggest wins of the quarter, of the month, either one? And then what could have made that quarter, that month even better? And then realignment. I will look at my higher level goals. So like if I'm at the monthly level, I'll look at my quarterly goals, I'll look at my yearly goals, and I'll see which ones still resonate. Maybe for realignment, I will rewrite my yearly, quarterly, and monthly goals in one sentence. I found that when I'm budgeting in particular, that really helps me. If I rewrite, these are my yearly money goals, these are my quarterly money goals, and so that's why I'm budgeting. That's why I'm, sometimes it feels boring, it feels like a slog, but this is the reason that I'm doing it. And then for a reinvigoration, like fun routine, I will make quarterly, monthly bucket lists, and I'll put them on the fridge. Maybe I'll look at tourist Instagram accounts in my area. I'll look at Spotify concerts in my area. Whatever's important to you, just kind of setting a routine. Like, what am I going to do to make sure that fun will get included? So then you're going to pick where, when, and how you want to have these routines. Like, when do you want to monthly plan and quarterly plan, and how do you want to do it? So you're going to pick where you're inspired most. So maybe for me, maybe that's at my desk with a candle and music going, and this is the setting that really is inspiring. Because the more you picture yourself in the setting, the more likely you actually are to do it. So you want to get really specific about where you're going to do this, what time of day you're going to do this. So then you're going to pick a good time that fits into my schedule. So maybe Saturday afternoon. So like the last Saturday of the month is when I'll do this. So monthly planning the last Saturday of the month, quarterly planning the last Saturday of the quarter. So those will overlap 4 times a year because there's 4 quarters. So 4 times a year, the quarterly planning and monthly planning will overlap. And I just do it in one setting. I don't really make it 2 different settings. I have in the past, but now I've just found that it's best to just do it all at once. So I kind of just do a mesh. So I'll reflect on the quarter and the month at the same time. A planning tool that feels like me. So like, where are you going to do this? Where do you want to reflect? Where do you want to cast for the future? Do you want to do this in a bullet journal? Maybe you've got one journal that you set aside for planning. So maybe you could go to the store, get a bullet journal. And what tool do you want to do this in? I have a planner. It's very similar to this iPad planner. I have a goal setting planner that walks you through quarterly and monthly planning if you're interested in that. But the tool is not as important as the routine and the fact that you do it regularly. And then I kind of wrote a note here that like if you want to do it in a journal, like maybe write the prompts in the front cover of the journal. Or if you have a bookmark for the journal, write the prompts on the bookmark so then you don't forget. Like these were the things, these up here were the things that I want to do every quarter and every month. And so you don't want to have to be like going back and looking, what did I say I want to do? I forgot what I want to do. Just make the routine a routine that you like, and then maybe just, okay, step 1, I do this, step 2, I do this, and then it just makes it easier. I found that quarterly planning and monthly planning is fun once I get into it, but if it's not crystal clear, like step 1, I do this, step 2, I do this, if there's any resistance at all or ambiguity as to what I'm going to do when I sit down, it's not going to get done. For some reason, the resistance to sitting down and doing important things is so hard. And then once you get into it, it's fun and it's well worth it, but it is hard to sometimes like sit down and actually do it. So then I wrote like little check boxes for you to write. Put 12 reminders, like if it's in your phone or in your calendar, whatever calendar you use, to do this. So there's quarterly planning and monthly planning, but since I do them at the same time on the times that they overlap, it's only 12 times a year. So maybe it feels like, oh, wow, quarterly planning and monthly planning, this is getting to be a lot. It's only 12 times a year. It takes me probably 20 minutes and it's just get realigned, And I try to not think of it as like, oh, it's got this chore that I got to do, but I really try to think of it as like, this is a time when I can get reconnected and recentered with myself, and I can put on a candle and music and just do whatever it takes to make it a really fun routine for you. Like for me, it's like, maybe music and candles is the thing, but maybe you want to do it in a park, or you want to go on a bike ride and then listen to headphones, and then maybe you want to speak it in a voice memo. I don't know. So just make it whatever it's going to take for it to be like actually authentically fun for you. Because I think it's really valuable, but we consistently do things that we find fun. So the more fun that you can incorporate into it, the more impactful it's going to be. So that's kind of the first part of monthly planning and quarterly planning, is kind of the realignment, getting re-inspired, simulating that new beginning. On the second page, there's the second part, and what I like to do is chunk down our goals even further. So at the yearly level, we chunk down our goals into the 4 quarters. So then during quarterly planning, like during quarter 1 planning, I take that quarter and I chunk it down into its month. So I go 1 level lower. During monthly planning, I chunk the monthly goals into its weeks. So maybe for writing a book, I would start with the end in mind. So by the end of phase 1, I want to have the rough draft complete, maybe. Okay, so by the end of month 3, I want the rough draft complete, which means by the end of month 2, I need to have rough drafted half the book, which means by the end of month 1, maybe I need to outline the book. So I've split the quarter into 3 phases: outlining, rough draft first half, rough draft the second half. And then once I get to month 1, so like if you're starting at the beginning of the year, January, if by the end of January I wanted to have the outline fully done, then maybe the first week I brain dump ideas, maybe the second week I pick an idea, maybe the third week I brain dump chapters, and maybe the fourth week then I outline the book. Or you could split it up into ways that make sense for you. So it's called segmenting your goals, segmentation. And so it's just taking the bigger levels and chunking them down further. And maybe you got behind on your goal, so this is where you can kind of reevaluate. Okay, I wanted to be here, but now I need to be here. So that's why I don't do it all at once at the beginning of the year, because a lot can change over the course of the year. So it's kind of good to make it happen as it comes. So I really like personally to have a routine that includes both the inspiration, kind of the vibiness, we're getting remotivated, but then also we do have the numbers and the metrics, and there's a system, and we're making sure it actually gets done. So that's why for quarterly and monthly planning, I really like to do both of these things. You've got the motivation, which is the first page of what we just did, and then you've got kind of the system and the chunking, which we did on the second page. So once you get down to the weekly level, like in this case, brain dumping chapters, or maybe all of quarter 1, you're rough drafting a book. So once you get down to the weekly level, a lot of times there's a habit that's kind of coming to the surface. So during that sacred time slot that we created, what's the habit for this week gonna be? And usually it's the same throughout the whole entire process. Like maybe you sit down to your desk and it's a little different each time. Maybe you're rough drafting at one point and you're final editing at one point, but the habit's pretty much the same. I'm going to show up Monday, Wednesday, Friday at my desk, and I'm working toward this milestone. So kind of just writing down, what is my habit going to be? Maybe it seems like it's a lot. I know for some people that kind of getting into planning can feel like a lot, but really it's just 12 times a year, 20 minutes a time. So 240 minutes out of your year. And I think that it's really worth it. It's something that has really helped me sustain motivation on my goals, and it helps me keep my eye on the target. You know, a lot of times if you just set like a New Year's resolution, you kind of lose sight over it throughout the year. And I think that's why New Year's resolutions get such a bad rap. But when you create a routine like this, how do I make this vision that I set at the start of the year, how do I translate that down and make my day-to-day actually look like that? So it's not just, there's not such a dissonance between like my vision board and my Pinterest boards look like this, and then my real life looks like this, and there's just such a disconnect. And so that's why I really like the segmenting and really chunking things down, so that like the more I've done this and the more I do this every year, the more that those things are kind of coming into alignment, where I'm like looking at the vision board, I'm looking at my real life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I live in San Francisco. I'm like in the sun all the time. I used to live like in snowy Idaho, and I would be like, the weather would impact my mood so much, and it was just like my dream to live in a place with better weather. And I'm like, wow, I'm doing it. This was so scary to me a year ago, and now this is just my new normal. And it's like last year's ceiling is this year's floor, and it's just so exciting to just keep building on that every year. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.